Something tells me this situation is nowhere near as simple as it first looked, because the moment that little gap opened up and Nina missed her chance to hit Drew with that paralytic, everything started sliding off the rails in a way nobody could have predicted. And honestly, that tiny delay may have changed the whole story. Drew was already in a dangerous position, already the kind of person everyone around him was trying to control, but now it looks like the situation may have turned into a full-on disaster. If you ask me, the real shock is not just that one syringe missed its target, it is what that missed timing may have set loose inside the house. From the outside, it probably seemed like a straightforward plan, but soap plans are never straight, are they? There is always a crack, always a second too late, always somebody who thinks they are in control right up until the moment they are not. And this is where things get interesting, because Drew was apparently able to move just enough while the paralysis was wearing off to throw everything into chaos. That means Willow, who may have been stepping in with another dose, could have found herself standing in the wrong place at the worst possible time. And that is the kind of detail that makes this whole thing feel less like a clean operation and more like a trap that snapped shut on the wrong person. We already saw that there was a missed window when Nina failed to get the paralytic into Drew at the right moment. That alone was enough to raise the stakes, but now there is a very strong possibility that Drew's body starting to respond again is what turned the whole scene into a nightmare. It looks like the medication was losing its grip. And if Drew could even twitch his fingers, then he may have been far more capable of resisting than anyone expected. And that matters, because Willow may have believed she had the upper hand, only to discover too late that the balance had already shifted. What makes this even messier is the possibility that Willow was not just acting on her own. Sidwell's fingerprints seem to be hovering over this whole mess, and that is where the fear really starts creeping in. He apparently gave Willow those extra syringes, the ones meant to mimic the paralytic and cover for any shortfall, which sounds helpful on paper, but suspicious as hell in practice. And if you ask me, when someone hands over backup syringes like that, it usually means they already expect the first attempt to go wrong. That could mean Sidwell was preparing for failure, or worse, preparing for fallout. It could mean he knew somebody in that house was going to become collateral damage. And now it looks like Willow may be the one paying the price. The idea that the syringe could turn on her, that it might end up piercing her instead of Drew, changes everything in a single breath. Suddenly, the person trying to push the plan forward becomes the one lying helpless on the floor. Suddenly, the target is still standing, or at least moving, while the person holding the weapon is the one who drops. That is the kind of reversal soap fans live for, because it takes a cold, calculated setup and flips it into raw panic. If this plays out the way it seems, Willow could become the next person hit by paralysis, and that would send Nina straight into a spiral. Because Nina would not just be seeing a failed plan anymore. She would be seeing her daughter collapse right in front of her. And that is where the emotional damage really begins. Nina already knows what it means to make a bad call under pressure. She has lived in that space before, where one impulsive move can cost her more than she can afford. But if Willow ends up frozen or unconscious because of this syringe mishap, then Nina is not just dealing with a secret, she's dealing with a daughter in danger. That is the kind of moment that strips away all the scheming and leaves only fear. It also means Nina may not have the luxury of thinking through the bigger picture. She may be so focused on saving Willow that she completely forgets Drew is still there, still breathing, and now possibly recovering in real time. And that, to me, is what makes this whole thing even more explosive. Drew may be regaining movement while everyone else is panicking over Willow. His fingers moving again would be a small detail in any other story, but here it could be the hinge that swings the whole door open. It suggests the drug is wearing off, which means Drew may soon be able to move more, react faster, and possibly see exactly what went wrong. That means the person who is supposed to be neutralized might be the only witness who can piece this all together. And if that happens, then the secret nobody wanted exposed could start spilling out one crack at a time. Now add Brennan into the mix. because his presence makes this even more suspicious. Fans already saw the time gap that allowed Nina to miss the shot at Drew, and that same opening led to the syringe hitting Brennan instead. Brennan becoming the one to drop raises all kinds of questions about what was really happening in that room. Was he the unintended victim of a bad sequence? Or was he already too close to the center of the scheme? The fact that Brennan, Willow, and maybe even Drew are all tied to the same dangerous chain of events makes this look less like one accident and more like a collapsing house of cards. One move out of place and the whole thing starts falling. That is probably why Nina, Willow, and Sidwell would all be so worried about the truth coming out. Because once the sequence is exposed, it does not just point to a bad moment. It points to intent. It points to planning. It points to a secret that was never meant to be seen. And if the police start asking questions about why there were syringes in Drew's home, why people were dropping one after another, and why the entire scene looks so suspicious, then the whole mess could become impossible to control. What starts as a medical emergency could easily turn into a criminal investigation, and that is where the fear really grows teeth. If that happens, Nina's first instinct may be to get Willow out of there and straight to the hospital. And that would make perfect sense, because once a mother sees her child go limp or collapse, there is no room left for strategy. She would rush Willow out without thinking about Drew still being inside, possibly waking up, possibly moving, possibly remembering enough to connect the dots later. That would leave the house as a crime scene in everything but name. Police would not need much to start digging. A string of unexplained collapses, a panicked rush to the hospital, and a trail of syringes would be more than enough to make them suspicious. And here is the part that feels especially dangerous. The more people try to cover this up, the worse it may become. Sidwell may think he is managing the fallout with those extra syringes, but that kind of backup plan usually becomes the very thing that gets somebody caught. Willow may think she is just doing what needs to be done, but if Drew reacts fast enough, she may end up being the one who pays the immediate price. Nina may think she is protecting her daughter, but in the process, she could end up dragging more attention straight to the truth. That is the pattern here. Every attempt to control the damage seems to make the damage louder. And let us not forget the wildest twist of all, which is that Drew may be the one who ultimately gets saved because of the police coming in. That is the kind of irony soap loves to serve up cold. The very chaos caused by the failed scheme could force authorities to intervene, and that intervention may be what prevents Drew from being left alone long enough for the situation to turn worse. So the same chain of mistakes that puts everyone on edge might also become the reason Drew survives the ordeal. It is messy, it is cruel, and it is exactly the kind of thing that keeps a storyline burning hot. Still, there is no easy ending here. Not yet. Because once Willow is gone, Brennan is down, and Drew is starting to come back to life, the house stops being a private scheme and starts looking like a scene the police cannot ignore. And that means somebody is eventually going to have to explain how one missed moment turned into a medical emergency, a near cover-up, and a secret that may be impossible to bury. So the real question is this: when the smoke clears, who is going to be exposed first? And who is going to realize too late that the syringe was never the only weapon in the room?
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.